Hi, everybody. This is Gertrude Mache here in sunny Wellington, New Zealand. To all my friends in North America and Europe, I'm sorry to brag, but the sun is shining and we're having a fantastic summer. I am graced with the presence of yet another amazing lady on the Her Story podcast. Fiona Brown is hailing all the way in Australia. Fiona, welcome.
Thank you very much, Gertrude.
Please tell everybody exactly where you are in the world, how old you are, and tell your story today.
Okay, so I live in Port Stephens in New South Wales, which is a couple of hours north of Sydney. I'm 51 years old, although I've decided I'm just going to stay 50 until further notice. But on paper, I'm 51. So I've had a bit of a journey over the last 51 years, starting with being the second eldest of 9 children. I was born in a suburb of Sydney called Balmain, which was very working class when I was growing up. It was a great little community where myself, my 2 sisters and my 6 brothers could ride our roller skates and skateboards and bikes around the streets. We could stay out late until after dark, till Mum called us. It was a really safe, wonderful, warm, welcoming community to grow up in. Although I'm the second eldest, I'm by far the smallest in my family. I'm only just over 5 foot. When I was little, wore thick Coke bottle cat's eye glasses. I had train track braces. I was really, really super shy, and certainly not one to speak out. I really only spoke when I was sort of asked to. Even at school, I was sort of the one that hid up the back or sort of kept quiet. But over the years, I suppose being one of 9, I had to sort of have a voice at some stage. So over the years, my first part-time job was in a chicken shop when I was 14 years old. I remember walking past, seeing a sign in the window. They were asking for, a junior. I had just been fishing with my cousin. I stunk of fish. I was up the road to get some more prawns. I was dressed in daggy shorts and a T-shirt, but something in me made me go in and ask about the job, so I did. And before I got down the end of the hill back to my home, my mum said, they want you back up to have more of a chat. So I went up to this little chicken shop and they took me under their wing for the next 7 years. So I worked there till I was 21 years old. So I worked there through school and college and university. It was a great thing for me to do because it gave me independence. It gave me, although it was something like $2.42 an hour at the time, it was money and it was an independence, and it enabled me to step into a space that I'd never been in. I was so super shy. I used to hide behind the big piles of paper where we used to sort of put the chicken on and wrap it up. But the 2 older men who owned the shop, who were in about their 60s, when I used to go to work, particularly on a Thursday night when this man used to walk in, who was my tennis coach at school, the 3 of them, knowing I was so shy and blushed really easily, used to all together in big booming voices sing me operatic love songs because they knew I would just go beaming bright red and hide down behind the paper. And I learnt to love that someone was seeing me and someone was interested in me and wanted to connect with me in a way that got me out of my shell. And that was quite a turning point for me. After a while, I never blushed anymore, and I thought it was quite fun. Yeah, it was really great. So from then on, I finished school. I went to college and university, did my nursing training. And then I worked in a hospital for about 7 years in Sydney. Then I moved to the country. I always knew that I was going to end up living in the country, but I never knew how it would happen. So I went one weekend to visit a friend who was living 3.5 hours away from Sydney. I'd known him for many years, and when I went up that weekend, my mum said to me, when you get to Mudgee, say hello to David for me, because he knew all of my family. I got to Mudgee, I said hello to David, I gave him a hug, and that was it. So we started going out, and 6 months later I was living in the country, and I worked in a rural hospital in the middle of New South Wales, and I was responsible for 25% of New South Wales in the nursing specialty I was in. That gave me another opportunity to really get out of my comfort zone. I was running clinics, I was doing education, I was starting groups, I was doing research, I was doing all sorts of wonderful things to benefit the people in the communities. I became chair of a state nursing group. I spoke at conferences, I chaired conferences, and I realised how much I love connecting with people and talking with people and helping them walk in the space that I'd been walking in outside of my comfort zone. I actually, right now, if I'm not out of my comfort zone for a little while, I get uncomfortable. I get uncomfortable being in a safe space. It's like, oh, I'm not living. I need to get out there. I don't like to sit too still for too long. I mean, yes, I'm
constantly stretching yourself and looking for those areas out of your comfort zone, and not many people do that.
No, I like that. So I realised how much I loved that. So after I did that role for 5 years full time, and then another 3 years part time after I had the children. It was a big juggle. I was driving an hour and 20 minutes to work, and then flying to some rural communities and back, and then driving home. So my days were sometimes 12 hours long. It was a stretch and a juggle. And one day I realised that if I didn't spend more time with my family, there are years that I would miss with them. So I took 5 months leave. It was all the holidays and long service I had. During that time, I really had to let go of a lot. I kept getting a message in my head saying, don't add, subtract. So it was not about trying to do more, be more, have more. It was, how do I let go of some things in my life to really identify the clear path that I'm meant to be on. So I did that. I let go of some friends, gracefully, very gracefully. They weren't quite so aware as I was. I let go of the guilt about leaving my role, which they actually, after I finally left, didn't ever fill again. The role I was in as a clinical nurse consultant, continence advisor, is not a very sexy part of nursing. Not many people get excited about helping people in that department, but I loved it. So I got rid of a whole lot of monkeys off my back, a lot of guilt. I gave myself time. And at that time, it was around the time that my mother died. She died of bowel cancer. I was blessed enough to be with her when she died. I held her hand and told her it was okay to take her last breath. She was unconscious, but she knew. My father then died only a few years later, I'm sure out of heartbreak. He only ever spent one night alone in his life, and it was the night before he died. So he was obviously never meant to be on his own. So while they went very early in my life, I was only in my mid-30s then, and I had sensed that right from when I was about 10 years old. I sensed a great gap or an ending in my mid-30s, except I thought it was going to be me. But it was them, and that taught me a lot, and it really helped me step up. It was like the front line had gone, and I became one of the front runners in the family. I was the second eldest, but I was probably more a leader than the others in my family. So from then on, when I had that 5 months leave, I also, that's right, it must have been a bit later, a couple of years after that, I turned 40, and I walked out the front of our yard, and we had a little patch of sand from where we'd done some renovations. I drew a line in the sand physically on my 40th birthday, and I stepped over that line and said, when I step over this line, I will never, ever be unhappily employed again. Because there was times that I was really unhappy in my previous role. Although I loved it, management wasn't quite so helpful all the time. So I stepped over that line. I was unemployed at the time. I'd never been unemployed in my life since I was 14. And I suppose I let go. And within 2 weeks, I was offered 3 jobs. I took one of those jobs, which was working with an eye surgeon. And 12 years down the track, I still work with him, and we get on famously. So I really enjoy that. Knowing that there was more to me than just working as a nurse, I also started to do some other work. I started doing energy healing. I trained in life and personal leadership coaching. An opportunity came my way to become involved in a youth leadership coaching program in the town I worked in rural New South Wales, which gave me the opportunity to learn very good coaching skills. I coached many young adults over the next few years. I became program manager. So the 12 years that I was involved in the program, I was coach, trainer, program manager. I did everything to run that program. We actually we got 2 awards in Clubs New South Wales and in the Rural Achievement. I can't off the top of my head. I can't remember. It was about achievement in rural communities, and we won an award for that as well. Yeah. What I loved most about that was connecting older people in the community with younger people who would then coach them through 22 weeks in achieving their own goals, whatever they wanted. So it was all about them. The growth that I witnessed in these young people and in the coaches was just phenomenal. At the end of the program every year, they would make me cry. We had some rough diamonds that just shone at the end. We had people or young adults especially, who were already achieving, but they didn't really know who they were, or there was things about their life that they just didn't like. And they got to change those things. So I really, really enjoyed working in that. I went on also to do my hypnotherapy training and neuro-linguistic programming and matrix therapies. So I'm able to, when I meet someone to help them, I say I have many strings to my bow. So I'm not just a coach or just a healer or just an NLP practitioner. I get to dabble, and I love dabbling because there is no cookie cutter approach. There is no one person who is like any other.
Yes.
So I suppose, bring the best of what I know and have and the best of who I am and connect with them at a heart level to help them achieve whatever it is they want. Even if they don't want to achieve.
You seem to have achieved something really unusual in your life, in that you sound to me like you're constantly reinventing yourself.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of women will get employed in one profession and they'll rise through the ranks, and then they retire, and that's their life. What is it that has given you the drive to keep getting out of your comfort zone and seeking these boundaries? Because it takes a lot of courage to do that. It's not easy to go outside of your comfort zone.
I think it's probably my mother who really believed in me. And after she died, maybe I thought to myself, maybe there was something in her belief that she had. Maybe she saw something that I didn't, and I needed to explore that. Maybe that was it. I'm not quite so sure, but I do love learning. And, every day I read or listen to something, and I can't help but share it. There is no point whatsoever in me learning all these things and not sharing them.
Yeah.
No point for that.
Oh, wow. So you refuse to choose. You're constantly learning, constantly expanding yourself. I actually read a quote the other day that said something like, everything you want is on the other side of fear. And it sounds like that's what you've done. You keep crashing that fear barrier every single time.
I remember one time.
It gets easier, right?
Oh, absolutely gets easier, and it gets exciting. My husband and I did a week-long course together called Life Design, and in that we had to break a timber board with our hand, and we got to walk over hot coals. And the first time I did it, I was so excited. I was like, "Oh, can I do that again?" And I did it 5 times in a row.
That is so crazy.
I just love, the exhilaration I feel getting out of my comfort zone, and especially having people with me as I do it is just. That's living. That is so living.
Okay, so I have one last thing I'd like you to share with our audience. They say that we all come in with a knowing of everything we're supposed to do in our lives. And sometimes you can go to your future self and ask her how to do things, or you can go to your younger self and give her advice. So what advice would you give your younger self about life based on what you know through all of your experiences?
Start early. as soon as you get the inspiration, jump on it.
And just do it, right?
Yeah, and if you're not sure how, ask people who have been there before.
Yes.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, don't waste time. I've seen too many people die too early.
And you do die with all your visions and your dreams. So when inspiration hits, just do it.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming online today and showing your nuggets of wisdom and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks.
Always my pleasure to share.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.